What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatoito Boxing Show. And what a heavyweight showdown we witnessed this past Saturday night between the juggernaut Joyce, who was bouncing back, trying to get a winning streak going for him after his last victory over Cash Ali. Remember, he was coming off from that fight with Cash Ali, coming off of two back-to-back stoppages against Zhilei Zhang. And now he was trying to build a streak against heavyweight veteran War Derek Chisora. And what a fight it was, as true to Rock'em Sock'em Robots as you could have. Especially in the heavyweight division is where you'll see fights like this come to fruition. What a hell of a fight. From beginning to end, for those of you that are not heavyweight boxing fans, this is one of those fights that you should watch that will potentially garner your attention and make you a fan of that division. My all-time favorite, of course, is Evander Holyfield against George Foreman. I still go back and watch that fight whenever I have a free chance. And it's, for some reason, it's just one of those that's just nostalgic to me, and it always brings me back to my childhood when I was watching that fight, just tuned into the television. And this reminded me a lot of it because there was no playing around, no clowning around, no antics, nothing other than what we should have seen in the ring. And it was true heart, true grit by both fighters, where Joyce ends up taking the fight down center range, down the middle, 1 and 2s, every so often mixing in a couple uppercuts here and there, having success throughout the entire night on Derek Chisora. Chisora's chin is just as good as ever. He's one of those durable, gritty fighters that is hard for anybody to put him away, and has been in the ring with anybody and everybody from this generation. And the past generation, for that matter. He's been fighting for quite a while. And Derek Chisora outsized, was not the favorite in reach, was not the favorite in height. Just tucks his chin, lunges forward, and does whatever he can. Remember, we're talking about Derek Chisora that turned pro in 2007. "17 years as a pro, and still going strong with fights such as the one that we just witnessed this past Saturday. Derek Chisora came away with the decision win. He managed to drop Joyce in the 9th round. And the story of the night was output versus meaningful punches. The heavier punches were hands down landed by Derek Chisora, who continued to duck down, tuck his head, and lunge looping overhand punches, whether it was by the right or left hand, and was finding success over and over and over again. And one of those punches was definitely causing more damage to Joyce than Joyce's pitter-patter down center, where he was landing the 1s and 2s, and it looked like it was slow, and it looked like it possibly didn't have a lot of power behind those punches on Joyce's behalf. But come on, this is a 280-pound man raining punches from, especially at a height advantage, raining punches down on you. Of course they're going to take effect, especially as many punches as he landed. I haven't seen the CompuBox stats, but it was very evident if you watch the fight that the larger output was definitely on the side of Joyce. I would be very surprised if CompuBox showed otherwise. But the heavier punches were definitely landed by Chisora. They both hurt each other. Chisora was, I saw a comment where somebody said Joyce has turned Derek Chisora into James Toney by the time that the fight was over, which was very fitting. I mean, just think about it. Chisora was so swollen from having absorbed all the punches that Joyce hit him with, which looked like pitter-patter, but the evidence shows, as evident by Chisora's face, that Joyce is hitting really, really hard. Chisora gets the decision, knocks Joyce out. Knocks him down in the 9th round. Joyce answers the count and takes it right to Chisora, where Chisora was basically a shell of himself. His legs were gone. His stamina was diminishing. And he was fighting on all heart and just pushing forward and tucking his chin and letting those overhands go. And he would still find success. Joyce knew what Chisora was doing over and over and over again and was still failing to protect because he kept walking Chisora down, kept trying to contain him within the ropes and against the ropes in order for him to land his punches. It's very surprising that Chisora didn't go down. Very surprising with as many punches as he took from Joyce that he didn't go down. Joyce, of course, gutted. Gets the 3rd defeat of his career, 16-3 now. And Chisora improves to 35, 13, and 23 knockouts and is calling out Dillian Whyte so they could run that again. They've had very entertaining fights with Dillian Whyte. 2 to be exact. And he wants that trilogy. He was coming off of just nearly a year layoff, where he last beat Gerald Washington. And prior to that, he got stopped by Tyson Fury. He defeated Kubrat Pulev, leading to the Tyson Fury fight. And before the Pulev fight, he was riding a 3-fight losing streak. 2 to Joseph Parker in consecutive fashion. And prior to that, Alexander Usyk. So just think about those names. He went from Usyk to Parker, to Pulev, to Fury, to Gerald Washington, to get his legs back under him. Gerald Washington on the back end of his career. And then he gets Joe Joyce. At 40 years old, still fighting the top echelon. This is somebody who started as a pro in 2007 and fighting the top echelon of the heavyweight division at 40 years old. And he just defeated Joe Joyce. For Joyce, the only takeaway that I had was the weight. The fact that he looked a lot slower in his delivery and his punch output, even though he did throw a lot of punches. His footwork was slow and his hand speed was slow. And the only thing I could attribute to this is the weight. If we look at Joe Joyce, he came in at 281 and a quarter, I believe. Let's just say 281 and change. 281 and a quarter. And with Cash Ali in his last outing, which was March of this year, he was 286 and a half. With Zhilei Zhang in the rematch, he was 281 and a quarter. But in the first match of Zhilei Zhang, he weighed 256, which the team felt that the weight was an issue. So he needed a little more size to compete against Zhang in the rematch. Zhang came in at 278 in that first match against a 256 Joe Joyce. In the rematch, he puts on size to match that 278, except Zhang comes in even heavier at 287 and a quarter. And that rematch is where Joe Joyce started putting on massive weight. Prior to that first Zhang fight, Joyce had come in at 271, so heavier than the 256, where Joseph Parker was 255. Prior to that with Christian Hammer, he was 265, and Hammer came in at 263. So he's bouncing a lot. And he's gone from the 250s to the 260s to the low 270s and now shot up to the 280s. In 3 consecutive fights, I think it's affecting him. Because the Joyce that we were seeing that fought Daniel Dubois, the Joyce that we were seeing that fought Joseph Parker in these competitive fights, he stopped Joseph Parker. The Joyce that we were seeing had a little bit less weight, which allowed him to move a little bit more efficiently around the ring. He's a big body and a tall guy. With heavier weight, it's only natural that it's going to slow him down some. And this is what we saw against Derek Chisora. His punch selection, his boxing pedigree is what should have carried him through with what many call the one-trick pony of Derek Chisora. And those 13 defeats that he has, people have figured him out. Not by outslugging him and outpowering him, but by boxing him and outboxing him and moving. Because he's a heavy-handed puncher that's going for the knockout, and every single punch has bad intentions behind it. Joe Joyce stood in front of him, continued to walk him down, took every single one of those punches from Derek Chisora, and in the 9th round, Chisora, tired, with diminishing stamina, finds himself against the ropes, bounces off the ropes, lunging forward with that right hand, looping right hook, catches Joyce in what was a flash knockdown, and sends him to the canvas. Over and over and over again with those looping power punches, and Chisora walks away with a deserving victory, in my opinion. Spirited effort, amazing fight that got Saturday night going for boxing fans. On the undercard, it was a big card with a lot of fights. The only other fight that I paid attention to in this entire event was that of Brandon Lee. He's left PBC. He has since joined Queensberry, and this was his debut with Queensberry. Super lightweight, fought at a catchweight. He's a 140-pound competitor. Very, very good fighter at 140 pounds. This was his debut, and it was fought at a catchweight. He fought a guy by the name of Juan Anacona, who was 11-0 going into this fight. It was an 8-round scheduled fight. Brandon Lee came in at 143.5 pounds. Anacona at 142.5. It was fought at a catchweight, but still competing at the super lightweight division. Brandon Lee is one of those guys that has a very good resume. He's 29-0 now, and needs to start getting into those bigger fights. And he was pretty much iced out with PBC. Has since joined Queensberry. Queensberry extending to American fighters, just like Eddie Hearn now. This is going to be their big project. And I can't wait to see what he does with his career and what Queensberry does with Brandon Lee's career. Because now he just fought overseas. And we'll see how they start pairing him up over there. And if they could land him into a big championship fight. Don't be surprised if we see Brandon Lee and Liam Perro. Faster than we'll see Brandon Lee with one of the American fighters. Very, very interesting the way, and he looked good. No knockout, no knockdowns, just solid boxing, getting his legs under him. Brandon Lee had been relatively inactive. He now sits at 29-0 with 23 knockouts with his recent victory. And his last fight was in April of 2023 against Pedro Campa. Pedro Campa was in action on the Golden Boy card at the beginning of the month out in Ontario, California. Whereas Brandon Lee has been sitting since. So it's good to see him back active. He gave the first defeat of the career for Juan Anacona, who's an up-and-coming prospect. Can't wait to see what Brandon Lee does with Queensberry. So I'll leave you guys with that amazing heavyweight fight. And for those of you that are not big heavyweight boxing fans, this is a fight to watch. If you missed it, this is a fight that you want to watch. Just so you have an idea how the landscape is all coming about and how everything's starting to fare out within that division. It's not just about Usyk and Tyson Fury. They're on their way out. They've done everything that needs to be done in that division. Daniel Dubois is going to be fighting Anthony Joshua pretty soon. In September, I believe. You have Andy Ruiz and Gerald Miller who are going to be fighting one another. On the undercard of Crawford Madrimov. Deontay Wilder, who's on the fence whether he comes back or not. So the old guard that once dominated the heavyweight division is starting to exit out. And you still have those lingering like Derek Chisora, who's willing to give anybody a rough night on any given night. Joyce, who had the most promise out of anybody. Just within a couple years' time, he ran into Zhilei Zhang. And now Big Bang Zhang is out there as a big threat, trying to dominate the division. Joyce, who still has a lot of talent and a lot of promise behind him. Dillian Whyte, Chisoras, they're going to be exiting out. Joyce can't afford to take another loss. But then again, look at Chisora's record with 13 fights, and he's still giving hell to everybody at the top. But Joyce is at that stage where it's almost like a confidence issue that's starting to affect him. But a lot of good talent. The guard is changing in the heavyweight division. And with Andy Ruiz finally coming back, we'll see how he looks. With Gerald Miller, who gave an awesome fight to Daniel Dubois back in December, we'll see how he looks. But things are definitely changing and moving around within the heavyweight division. And that's why it's so exciting right now, because everything's up in limbo. And with the rematch between Usyk and Tyson Fury set for December, that should be it for one or the other. Either Usyk retires or Tyson retires or both. But Tyson says he still wants to make the fight with Joshua at the Wembley. With the loss, who knows how marketable that will be. Because if Joshua's successful over Dubois in September, he's going after the winner of Usyk and Fury. If Fury is successful in that rematch, there may be a trilogy clause between those two, which would be very likely since the rematch is in effect right now. But I'm sure Usyk will step aside for a big showdown at Wembley between Joshua and Fury. If Usyk wins and dominates Fury once again, the trilogy will be set between Joshua and Usyk. Usyk being up 2-0. And Joshua climbing his way back into world title contention. He'll have a title with him, should he be successful over Dubois. And it will shake everything up if it comes to that again. Meanwhile, everybody else is lining themselves up. And then you have the new guard, like the Richard Torreses, that are putting their careers together and building up, racking up wins to get themselves into title contention and title consideration. So it's a very interesting state that we find ourselves at in the heavyweight division, and I encourage you to go watch that fight. I leave you guys all with that. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the Toma Todito Boxing Show, and I will catch you all on the next episode. Take care.